check out arcgear.com for premium quality weightlifting, fitness, and combat sports equipment. Use the promo code HATMAN for a 30% discount off your first purchase. That's arcgear.com, link in the description. So Mike Coppinger's intel, his sources, quote unquote, turned out to be correct once again. They usually are correct. Canelo Alvarez has indeed signed to fight Avni Yildirim, and he's also signed a 2-fight deal with Matchroom. That's now official. Eddie Hearn is Canelo Alvarez's promoter or co-promoter because Canelo has his own promotional company. So, good news for Hearn, obviously, and Canelo seems to be happy with the situation as well. First fight against Yildirim, which will be February 27th. Second fight against Billy Joe Saunders in May. Now, I don't know if this has been officially announced now, but they've apparently agreed terms behind the scenes. So again, this is in line with exactly what Mike Coppinger said, that it would be Billy Joe Saunders in May. So solid journalism there from Coppinger. He was bang on the money. Now with Avni Yildirim, a lot of people are disappointed with this. I actually recently watched or rewatched the Dirrell Yildirim fight. And I have to say, I thought that Yildirim was ahead because the fight was stopped to the cut. It went to the scorecards. I think it was a split decision and Dirrell got it. But for me, Yildirim was actually ahead in that fight. The commentary I thought was fairly biased in favor of Dirrell. I feel like they gave Yildirim credit here and there, but the commentator scorecards and all that kind of business, nah, I thought that it was a bit biased in favor of Dirrell. I thought Yildirim did better than they made out. Now, Canelo surely is much more skilled and better than Anthony Dirrell. He may be a stronger puncher. I mean, Dirrell can punch. He's always been a good puncher at 168 pounds. Not an elite puncher like Adonis Stevenson was at 168 before he moved up, but still a good puncher. And Yildirim was able to deal with his punching power without any issues, although he never got caught in that fight the way he got caught by Chris Eubank Jr. So I think a lot of people are dismissing Yildirim and they're expecting this to be a blowout, mainly based on that Chris Eubank Jr. fight. Because they're thinking if Eubank Jr., who many of these people don't seem to rate, if he can blow Yildirim out in, 3 rounds, then Canelo's going to do the same. In fact, he's probably going to blow him out quicker. That might be the case, but if you want to, do your due diligence, you should look at the Yildirim-Anthony Dirrell fight. And he's very basic, by the way, Yildirim. He's basic, he's quite slow, but he is big at the weight. He looks big at the weight to me. He's strong. He's relentless. He's in good shape. No stamina issues there. So, yeah, stylistically, it's a fight which should suit Canelo, unless Yildirim has got some back foot game that I've never seen before, and he might. Then it's a style that's going to suit Canelo because Yildirim is going to come forward. Canelo Alvarez loves meeting people head on when they come at him, hitting them with the body shots, the uppercuts, the hooks, the counter punches, all his cute little moves that he has in his locker to make you miss and make you pay, basically. So yeah, I can understand people saying that Canelo's going to win this fight convincingly because I think he's going to win this very convincingly as well. But will he knock Yildirim out early? I mean, I think it all depends on what Yildirim does, his strategy. If Yildirim comes out firing all guns blazing at Canelo, yeah, there's a good chance he gets stopped early. But if he actually decides to be a bit more circumspect, I wouldn't be surprised if this goes longer than the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, which I believe was 3 rounds. So let's see what happens. At the end of the day, it is a mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, so people are complaining, but I guess you can't complain that much given the fact that it's a mandatory. I know people have highlighted the fact that Canelo Alvarez has dropped belts before, and that is a good point. In order to pursue a different fight, if he's got some pesky mandatory that nobody really wants to see, Canelo could easily drop the belt. Because at this point, Canelo is such a big star that a lot of people don't really care about what belts are on the line. They just care about what fights Canelo's in. The belts are just, window dressing as far as a lot of people are concerned. And I get that too. I take that point on board. But nonetheless, I personally, as a traditionalist, as an old school boxing fan, I'd like to see Canelo maybe become undisputed in one weight division. He's never been in undisputed before, right? I don't believe. When he fought Golovkin, did he become undisputed? He didn't, did he? Because there was a belt missing. So maybe he could become undisputed at 168 pounds. I'd like to see it. That's one thing in his career he hasn't achieved. He's a multi-division world champion, but he hasn't become undisputed yet. So let's see him do it at 168. And in order for that to happen, he has to take care of his mandatories. And the first one being Avni Yildirim. So, yeah, that's that Yildirim fight. As far as the Billy Joe Saunders fight, I think there's a difference in opinion about this, when you compare the American boxing fans and the Mexican boxing fans to the British boxing fans. As you might expect, the British boxing fans tend to rate Billy Joe Saunders more highly, and they think he's got a better chance of winning, or at least doing well, than the Mexican and American fans who think that this is just another Euro bum who Canelo Alvarez is going to take apart in pretty short order, or at least fairly comfortably, like he did with Callum Smith. Now, I think Billy Joe Saunders is not your typical British fighter, okay? He's more slick. He was an accomplished amateur, of course. And coming from the gypsy community, he has a bit more, how can I describe it? More self-confidence than the average British fighter. He doesn't mind going to people's backyards overseas. I mean, if you look at the way he behaved towards, what's the guy called now? I forget his name. Willie Monroe, excuse me. When Willie Monroe came over to the UK to fight Billy Joe Saunders, Billy Joe was basically bullying him. All right? And that kind of behavior from a British fighter isn't really the norm. There's only a few that do that really bully the opponent and trying to get in their head and mock them and push them around. Billy Joe is one of the type of fighters that does that. Tyson Fury a little bit, maybe one or two others, but generally British fighters are not like that. You tend to find that a lot more in America, where you have fighters who really try and bully their opponents before the fight, to intimidate them, to get in their heads, to defeat them before they get in the ring. But as I say, with some of the gypsy fighters, or a lot of the gypsy fighters in the UK, that's where you find that kind of thing. The psychological warfare, they tend to be operating at a higher level than most other British fighters when it comes to that. So I think it would be a mistake for people to look at Billy Joe, at least from a mental point of view, and compare him to Callum Smith, thinking he's going to be something like that. No. Billy Joe has got a lot more fire in his belly than Callum Smith, and he's more of a maverick than Callum Smith. I'm not even necessarily saying he's a better fighter, physically, technically, although I think he is better technically, but you have to take into account Callum Smith's size and what have you, punching power. But I'm more focused on the character of Billy Joe Saunders, and I just think he's a different kettle of fish entirely to someone like Callum Smith. So, yeah, I think that this is, for one, a great opportunity for Billy Joe Saunders, obviously, because he's wanted a big fight for so long. And he's wanted the Canelo fight for so long. I reckon Billy Joe Saunders will step up to the plate and he'll put in a good performance. Now, whether that is good enough to defeat Canelo Alvarez remains to be seen, but I do believe that Billy Joe Saunders will show up and he will show out and he will give it his all, try his best, and it will be a more interesting fight than the Callum Smith fight. I can't even say it will be more competitive necessarily, because Billy Joe's character is such that if he's in trouble, he might, and when I say in trouble, if he's down on the scorecards, he might take risks which will leave him vulnerable to getting stopped. But in my view, he is the kind of guy that would rather take those risks, instead of doing what Callum Smith did. And look, Callum Smith had a bicep injury or whatever the case may be. He would have lost the fight anyway, in my opinion. But even with the bicep injury, I've seen fighters grit down, bite down on their gum shield and really go for it with one arm. I mean, have you seen Danny Williams versus Mark Potter? So I've seen fighters do stuff like that. Callum Smith wasn't one of those fighters. I'm not sure Billy Joe Saunders could go to those lengths like Danny Williams, but I do think he has a bit more about him in terms of championship, elite level mentality than someone like Callum Smith. That's just my suspicion. Maybe Billy Joe's going to go in there and totally bottle it and I'll be proved completely wrong, but I don't think so. So as with most people, I think the Billy Joe Saunders fight is more interesting than the Avni Yildirim fight. And I know that a lot of the American fans are not going to think much of this. And they're going to say, see, this is why he signed with Eddie Hearn, so he can fight a bunch of cream puffs. He needs to be fighting the likes of Caleb Plant and Benavidez and so on. And, I want to see those fights too. But don't sleep on Billy Joe. Don't sleep on him. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this particular situation. Canelo Alvarez's 2-fight deal with Eddie Hearn. Fighting Avni Yildirim first and then Billy Joe Saunders. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high-quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.